America, a paradise for parental child kidnappers, supported by corrupt sanctuary city judges, exposing the atrocious, corrupt family court system and the ruthless plague of legalized governmental child kidnapping in the USA and other countries around the world.
Every government in the world, except Somalia and the United States, has now signed and ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the US has accepted the treaty's main principles. Yet despite this promise made to the children of the world, they are still being forced into slavery, murdered by their own governments, and neglected to death.
Ever since making our film The Dying Rooms, exposing fatal levels of neglect in China's state-run orphanages, Kate and I have felt the need to expose the abuse and exploitation of children in other countries around the world. A carefully crafted and properly enforced treaty should provide relief from lives of pain, isolation and exploitation that many children suffer. Yet our 8-month journey across 21 countries was to prove that governments everywhere continue to betray their children, abusing, neglecting and exploiting them.
Long Island's Family Courts Channel attorney, Judith Powell, and Dr. Carlos Riviera talk about problems with Long Island's family courts.
This is where the horror begins. This is the entrance to the Suffolk County Family Court and Supreme Court building. Everybody going in here is in for a bunch of misery. They're in for a world of hurt. They're in for destruction of their families, and we're going to talk to them as they come out. You'll look at everybody's face as they go in. Most of the people aren't going to be smiling. That's because nothing good comes out of this building. Many people have been coming here for 5, 10, some even 15 years, every single month, taking off from work, taking time out of their day to come here into this hellhole. This is the entrance to hell. Hi, how are you? Gary Jacobs. I'm with Long Island Backstory, and we're doing a story on the horrors of family court. What's your name?
I'm Isaac McNair.
And what were you here for today, Isaac?
You know, me and my wife was going through some troubles. You know, we just got divorced or whatnot. You know, it was a real heartbreak. You know, it cost me a lot of money. You know, a lot of pain. You know, but you know, that's the way the system is. You know, for sure they could have, you know, speed everything up. You know, got everything done right there and there. But you know, I guess everything takes its course.
What's your name?
I'm Amy.
And how long did it take you from start to finish to get divorced?
3 years.
Okay. And do you think there's any problems with the system as far as dragging the family into it, and how long it takes to get divorced, and how much it actually costs to get divorced here?
Oh, I think it's a major problem, but I think the problem is a lot of the lawyers drag it on. I think they cause a lot of problems. I mean, at least with me and my ex-husband, it became very acrimonious because lawyers started pushing the envelope, and you fight over nonsense after a while. Kids, money. Well, let's just say for what it cost us, we could have put our 3 kids through college and grad school.
Hi, how are you? I'm Gary Jacobs with Long Island Backstory, and we're doing a story on the horrors of family court and divorce. Were you here today for a divorce?
Sir, I've been going through a divorce since 2009. And it's all about money, and the Salomon law firm, if anybody's interested, you go to his website, you click on his pictures, and then you go Team Salomon, and if you think this person should be representing people as a lawyer in the state of New York, then there's a problem. Also, Judge Krecker, who is my judge, has just told me that money, $20,000 that were destined for my child's welfare for Social Security, it doesn't matter. And I don't understand how anybody could say that in a judicial manner, or using the law, that money can just disappear.
Let me ask this. Do you feel that as a father and as a man that you're being treated equally in court, or do you feel there's a bias against men in the court system here?
Absolutely. There is a definite bias against men in the court. That's all a woman has to do is come in and cry or say that you're abusive, you yell at them or something like that. And it's the only people that are getting by on this are lawyers. It's a cottage industry, and there's a lot of money to be made here.
Theodore L. Gunderson, born November 7, 1928, died July 31, 2011, was an American Federal Bureau of Investigation special agent in charge and head of the Los Angeles FBI. He was most famous for handling the Marilyn Monroe and the John F. Kennedy cases. He was the author of the best-selling book, How to Locate Anyone, Anywhere.
At the time of my retirement, I was in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division, which was responsible for most of Southern California. I had over 700 personnel under my command and a budget of $22 million. Shortly after I retired, I was asked to investigate, as a private investigator, the Dr. Jeffrey R. McDonald case. It was after that, the investigation of this case, that I realized some of the serious situations that confronted our nation today. Within 10 months of entering the case, I obtained a signed confession from one of the assailants. Dr. McDonald had been convicted of the crime. It involved the murder of his wife, pregnant, and two children, 2.5 and 5.5 years old. The courts refused to accept my confession. The girl's name was Helena Stokely, saying that she was not credible. However, in researching the matter further, I learned that Helena had been an informant for the government and also for the local Fayetteville, North Carolina Police Department. So, in other words, she was not credible in connection with the McDonald case, but she was credible enough before this to work with various government sources. Helena told me that that night was her initiation into a satanic cult.
And what people are talking about are social services working hand in hand with lawyers and barristers and the courts, fabricating evidence, committing perjury in court, falsifying court records, intimidation by the police in order to take people's children away from them.
But why would they want to do this? And is, you know, I'm very...
Three reasons. We believe three main reasons. Okay. One is to break up families. If you look at the way our society is going, families are under continual attack. And you break up families because that alienates mum and dad and it leaves the children vulnerable. Mm-hmm. We are very sure, and I think it's not going to be too long before I don't have to do the research, other people are digging, we believe children are being used for drug testing. And children are dying in hospitals. There is never any proper pathology done on what caused the death, no proper analysis. And we are confident that what's actually going on is drug testing on children. And the other requirement...
Well, these are very serious allegations.
Very serious allegations. And the other thing which we are very certain is children are being deliberately taken from their parents and they are then being put into a system of abuse, which is either physical or sexual.
Well, again, extremely serious allegations, Brian.
Well, I don't sit here making these idly, and I've got no worries about this, because initially when people spoke to us, some you would say, where's the evidence? They're traumatised, they don't have it. But when people arrive with 3 ring files where they're showing falsified papers, they're showing discharge notes from hospitals with no signatures and no diagnosis, and I can show you 4 hospitals involved in that, we know what these people are saying is real. And at a talk in South Wales, 3 ladies stood up on camera with me, and one of them, as an example, said that when she tried to help the mother to stop the daughter being taken, she was threatened by the police.
Well, okay, but that's an individual case, and you weren't there, were you? So
no, but what I'm saying is that people are prepared to stand up and tell their story. And why you are not hearing about it, or we're not hearing about it, is because the family courts are closed. Now, we've had a change to that in that it's recently been stated the results of the court hearings will be made known, but that is a smokescreen because the damage is being done inside the courts.
And they're meeting in secret, aren't they?
They're meeting in secret. Just suppose that the judge running a secret family court was himself a child abuser. Just suppose that was true. You'd have a very dangerous situation. And I'm going to say the evidence coming in across the country is this is what is happening.
Well, I mean, that is probably the most shocking revelation that we've had on this show.
If you would like to run another programme and you would like people with the evidence and the experience, we will bring them to you.
Well, OK, well, that's very interesting, and we'll certainly consider that. And as I say, if Common Purpose want to write a reply, we'll certainly give that to them.
Can I stress, because I think this is an important thing, I have not said that Common Purpose is directly involved in this activity, but what I will say to you is if we know that Common Purpose are having closed-door meetings for which there are no minutes, it would facilitate inappropriate behaviour by people in social services.
OK, so it could be a separate thing and not connected to Common Purpose. That's what you're saying. OK, I think that's important to make that point. OK, well, it's been absolutely mind-blowing, this programme tonight, and thank you, everyone, for texting. And thanks to those who watched, and I'm speechless, really. Thank you to my special guest, Brian Gerrish. If you've enjoyed this show, please tell all your friends. Next week, we'll be back with yet another exciting show that might well change the direction of your life. Until then, remember, they're watching you, watching us, watching them. Cheerio.
In the end, in institutions that are run by people, corruption is found everywhere. In some places more, and in other places less. In the family court system, corruption is all over the place. The responsible parties are all the court officials, but especially the judges, who are supposed to be supervising the policies and upholding the law, and they are great at doing it in a very evil way. Judges are guilty as charged for ruining the family court system and because of that, destroying our society. Like these lawless judges. Judge Margaret Casey Rogers, Judge Mary Koch Polson, Judge Michael A. Flowers, Judge Terrence Ketchel. The danger of being a whistleblower. Whistleblowers tend to face resentment from superiors. Still, a whistleblower may get the cold shoulder from peers and be treated like a snitch. This culture of retaliation creates a hostile workplace for the whistleblower. Depending on the harm they could cause to dangerous people and associations with affected interests, it might even be the cause of their death. The following judge was so frightened of retaliation that he only became a whistleblower after he was facing his own death through a book. The Fraternity, the corruption of the legal system, exposed by a judge. John F. Malloy was an attorney who served as a judge on the Arizona Superior Court bench. Judge Malloy wrote a book that was published in 2004, a few years before he died in 2008, suffering from cancer at the time. He knew his remaining time on earth was short. The title of the book is The Fraternity, Lawyers and Judges in Collusion, published by Paragon House. It is an amazing expose on just how corrupt the American judicial system is today. It gives us a better understanding on how so many judges in family or juvenile courts across the United States are able to successfully remove children from the custody of their parents in medical kidnapping cases. Let's follow up with some of our courageous whistleblowers who have been sadly silenced.
Former State Senator Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce were found dead today at their Havisham County home.
Fox 5's Justin Gray is here now with more. Justin?
Yeah, Russ, former State Senator Nancy Schaefer was well known for championing conservative causes. Tonight, GBI crime scene investigators are at her Northeast Georgia home. They're searching for clues that might tell them what led to the sudden and violent deaths of Miss Schaefer and her husband.
and I ask that you please rise with me for a moment of silence.
The announcement was made around 7:30 this evening on the floor of the Georgia General Assembly. The bodies of former state Senator Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce were found today at their Habersham County home. Investigators say both had been shot.
Preliminarily, it looks to be a murder-suicide. The GBI has 6 agents on the scene, 2 crime scene specialists. There will be a thorough investigation.
Punch 11. Mrs. Schaefer was a former Atlanta mayoral candidate. She was also a 2-term state senator who represented the 50th district, including all or parts of 8 North Georgia counties.
Katie Couric and CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford discussed the life and death of a federal judge, John McCarthy Roll, who was fatally wounded in the Tucson, Arizona shooting that critically injured Representative Gabrielle Giffords.
One of the victims was the chief federal district judge of Arizona, John Roll. Ironically, he had received death threats himself just 2 years earlier. Joining us now is Jan Crawford, our chief legal correspondent. Jan, what do we know about Judge Roll?
Well, Katie, Judge Roll was widely respected. He'd been the chief judge of the federal court in Arizona for the past 5 years. He was appointed by George H.W. Bush when he was president, but he was a moderate. Now, he had also lived through fallout from making some unpopular rulings. It was just 2 years ago that he received multiple death threats, and he was temporarily assigned a security detail after he had ruled that a group of illegal immigrants could go forward with this lawsuit against an Arizona rancher. At the time, he told the Arizona Republic, and I quote, "I have a very strong belief that there is nothing wrong with criticizing a judicial decision, but when it comes to threats, that's an entirely different matter."
And Jan, do we know if the shooter was targeting the judge, or did he even realize the judge was at this event?
No, Katie, and Judge Roll may have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. We don't know a motive at this point. Now, Chief Justice John Roberts today in a statement called him a wise jurist who had, quote, selflessly served Arizona and the nation. And he said his death today was a, quote, somber reminder of the importance of the rule of law and the sacrifices of those who work to secure it.
All right, Jan Crawford in Washington. Jan, thanks very much.
Bill Bowen was a firefighter and a former federal investigator. He stated that CPS is a criminal organization specialized in destroying families and children. He released a documentary called Innocence Destroyed, exposing the corruption within child protection services in the USA. Sadly, he unexpectedly passed away in 2010 from a heart attack before he was able to finish the whole film. Whistleblower Ted Gunderson was an ex-FBI chief who exposed the CIA, drug cartels, U.S. government, the president, and the court system. In 2011, one of his enemies poisoned him.
My friend, the late and great Ted O. Gunderson, former head of the FBI in L.A., Dallas, and Memphis, requested of me and of his daughter that an autopsy was made of his body. And I thought, well, we had discussed that during his life. If anything were to happen to him, he wanted to find out what made him die. So for 6-7 weeks, he laid in cold storage waiting for an autopsy. I don't know if it's come out formally, but it has been done. You said that with his fingers becoming colored or purple, is that a sign of anything?
Yes, that's one of the signs of arsenic poisoning. And several individuals in the past have turned into a black mummy as a result of acute arsenic poisoning, such as Lenine and the John Wilkes Booth double. But I had Ted under some type of treatment for a number of years with a certain special diet, rich in sulfur, rich foods, to neutralize the arsenic. And as a result, his fingernails, which had been dark purple black, had cleared up. But he was very busy in fighting the enemy, and he was receiving 30 phone calls a day, and as a result, he did not go down to seek the treatment of alternative medical clinics, which would have subjected him to a process of chelation and other therapies to eliminate all the arsenic. One of the common results of arsenic poisoning is cancer of the bladder.
We would like to dedicate this documentary to the lives of these late dedicated, unselfish, and uplifting heroes. Former Senator Nancy Schaefer, Judge John F. Malloy, Bill Bowen, Judge John Roll, former FBI Chief Ted Gunderson. We know that there are still amazing people out there fighting for themselves, their children, family, and society. Here they are. Hold on to your family. Don't get divorced, and you won't have to even step into the obsolete system of family court. Lost in System. Former family court judge and whistleblower speaks out about family court corruption. Family court whistleblower and former mediator talks about corruption. Emily Gallup. Professor Anthony Pappas, a victim of Nassau Family Court, New York. Whistleblower Carol Rhodes, former Michigan Family Court officer. Whistleblower Carlos Morales. Melinda Murphy has worked in child welfare for over 20 years. She is co-author of a book, A Culture of Fear, an inside look at Los Angeles County's Department of Children and Family Services, by SBPRA Books. Lawless America, the movie. Update from Bill Windsor, October 26, 2012. Corrupt and lawless sanctuary city judges award custody to an illegal. A caring father whose child was taken away from him by corrupted judges in the USA. He will never stop fighting for Sean and helping others. Fathers for Justice. Lighting Their Way Home. Finding justice for those without a voice. Child abductions are hard to deal with. The thought of a child being ripped from the only life they have ever known is a nightmare of any parent. The most common form of child abduction is parental child abduction. Australia. The family law court system is broken, with Senator Pauline Hanson and David Pillow. All these amazing people are risking their lives, fighting to keep families together. Family is the main nucleus of our society. Without good families and good upbringing of children, the American society is destined to have an ill community with broken homes and devastated families. Our future wouldn't look that bright. Families are a social matter, not a political one. Are we just going to stand there and see it torn apart by evil people with uncalled for rules? Are there solutions? Yes, there are solutions. Fight together. Never by yourself. Research a good association against the family court corruption and join them. Ask for support and advice. Protest family court corruption. Support the family court reform movements, online, physically, and financially. Family court systems must be reformed. Join protests. Don't be silenced. Never give up. Appeal to the international courts for help. Avoid the family court. Do what you can to avoid that obsolete system. Be smart and run the other way. Protesting for family court reform. The system is turning good people into criminals for illegal and inhumane reasons. Fighting for reform of the corrupt family courts. Gary Jacobs. This man is fighting for family court reform.
Hi, my name is Gary Jacobs, and I'm an advocate for family law reform, and we're here today at John Jay College protesting because the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, is here. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. We have a big crowd. I know it's hard with the street in the background, but I appreciate everybody coming. A lot of you came from Long Island, had to get up early to come here. A lot of people from the city and some people from upstate. The reason that we chose to protest today in front of John Jay College with Eric Schneiderman here is because the Attorney General has failed to prosecute false allegations, perjury, and most importantly, abusive judges, corrupt judges, and biased judges. The Attorney General has turned a blind eye to all these complaints that we've made, as well as the Moreland Commission, which many of us have made complaints, and all of our complaints have been sent back as not part of the scope of the Moreland Commission. What we're asking for is that every allegation of a biased judge is investigated, and in cases like in Suffolk County, where Judge Marion McNulty in the Supreme Court made civil rights violations against men, gay people, and Hispanic people, and rather than allowing her to retire early, rather than asking her to leave, they let her leave with her full $170,000 a year pension and didn't make it public the reason that she was left, which would have left open the grounds for everybody to appeal. Thank you again for everybody for coming, and please join our group. The website is in front, and get involved. We all need to rally behind each other to fix this issue.
Pro-family court reform. Judge Judy. Susan Judy Scheinlin, also known as Judge Judy, is an American lawyer, former judge, television personality, producer, and author. Since 1996, Scheinlin has presided over her own successful daytime, Emmy Award-winning reality courtroom series. Scheinlin passed the New York State Bar examination in 1965 and became a prosecutor in the family court system. In 1982, New York City Mayor Ed Koch appointed her as a judge, first in criminal court, then later as Manhattan's supervising family court judge in 1986. Source: Wikipedia.
I had been in family court for 25 years. And although I loved it, you're very lucky if you find a place in the world where you're naturally adept at what you do, so every day isn't like going to work because it's comfortable. I mean, if they put me into a biology laboratory or a chemistry laboratory, I would be a fish out of water. But somehow I understood people. I understood what motivated them. In the family court, that venue was tough because most of the people that you were dealing with were innocent children who had no idea who you were and what control you had over their lives. But you had to make determinations whether to give an infant back to a crack mother who had failed 2 or 3 times before. And do you take a chance of turning over this innocent 9-month-old or 12-month-old to someone who was drug involved, had drug involved boyfriends, and then you pick up the paper one day and you find that baby floating down the East River. Or you had people who abused children horrifically. So that 25 years after a while, even though you love the work, it tends to make you old. It's not that you worry whether or not you made the right decisions, Michael. It's because you know you can change so little in the family court. The pathology is so ingrained. Am I getting too much into this?
No, not at all.
The pathology is so ingrained in the population that we had in the family court that I knew, no matter how much I tried, and I gave it 110% of my energy, and I explored every option, if you were lucky, you made a difference in 10%. And that's really a difficult venue to work in. You know, usually you work in a venue, and if you give it a job 110% of your energy, then you're a success. But giving this job 110% of my energy, 90% of the time I was a failure, and it wasn't my fault. It was systems' fault, it was people's fault, it was lack of motivation, not mine.
Kids with divorced parents should choose where and with whom they want to live. They should also have the right to see and grow up with both of their parents. Jonathan Turley, born May 6, 1961, is an American lawyer, legal scholar, writer, commentator, and legal analyst in broadcast and print journalism. He is currently a professor of law at the George Washington University Law School. He is a nationally recognized legal scholar, who has written extensively in areas ranging from constitutional law to legal theory to tort law.
It was a novel experiment for someone like James Madison, because we have a country that's most pluralistic on earth. And he knew that. We were divided by race and religion, gender, economics, even classes that were inherited from other countries, and ones that were formed here. So he developed a country that would be based on a system of law that could be accepting and could in fact flourish that diversity. What he gave us, and the framers gave us, was a constitution that is a common article of faith that binds Americans. It's like a covenant, and we have it in common. No matter what we disagree on, no matter how hateful the debate may become, we have a common legacy found in that document. That's why it drives me crazy when the president keeps on referring to the fact that this is our defining moment. We had that defining moment in the 1700s. We had that defining moment when we agreed to a constitution that bound us all. And it required a leap of faith, a greater one than you're being asked to take today, a great leap of faith at the time, to believe not just that we could have this system that works, that honors and respects us all, but that we were going to go at it together. Now, I happen to believe we're living through a crisis of faith, that there are people in our government that for some reason have lost faith in that heritage. I don't understand it. You know, James Madison created the system, the Madisonian democracy, in a way that really didn't try to inspire you. You know, the U.S. Constitution is not an inspiring document. When people say how beautiful the U.S. Constitution is, I've always looked at them. It reads like the IRS code. There's nothing beautiful about it. It was written by a sort of a nerd, you know, a wonk. You know, James Madison was the sort of ultimate nerd of government. He was a, 5'4" with a squeaky voice, and you know, if he was alive today, he'd be inventing some .com in a garage. I mean, he was just not built for it. But he had one thing that was unique about James Madison, and that is he really was interested in government from a theoretical standpoint. He was fascinated by it, not just by how it worked, but how to create one to last. And he studied government. In fact, if you look back at some of the letters of the framers, they're wonderful. You know, there's a letter from Governor Morris saying, if James Madison lectures us one more time on the ancient Greek states, I'm never coming back. But what he created was this system that had enormous staying capacity. It's sort of like the all-terrain vehicle of systems. It'll take you anywhere you want to go. There's only one rule in the Madisonian system that can never be broken, and that is, you cannot go outside the rules. It's the only rule. So he built a system that is idiot-proof, and God knows we've tested that. But it's a system that is designed to survive. Many of you know that he said, look, if we were all angels, we wouldn't need a government. So he created a system that could be run by devils, could be run by people with the worst motivations, and still produce a majoritarian result, still produce this unique experiment. You just can't break the rules. You got to stay within them. You have to take the leap of faith. Now, I've been a big critic of this president, and that's an understatement of a lifetime. But I was critical of the last president, too. I guess I just don't like presidents. But you know, actually, it's interesting because I was a critic of Bill Clinton's and George Bush, and I wrote a column recently. I write for USA Today, and I wrote a column not long ago that said they're remarkably alike as individuals. The thing I disliked about Bill Clinton, I disliked about George Bush, and that they're relativists. Bill Clinton was a moral relativist. And you know what? George Bush is a legal relativist. He believes that the law is a technicality. He always has. It doesn't make him evil, it just makes him a man of zeal. And you know, Louis Brandeis once said the greatest danger to our country is not from evil-minded rulers from without, it's from overzealous men who act without understanding.
International laws. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, signed and ratified by 196 nations, except the USA. The USA is the only country left, who has not signed this important UN convention. Why? UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Why is this important treaty to protect children being violated across the world? The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, a beacon of hope for children all over the world. Hope that protects them. Hope that secures their future. Question: why hasn't the U.S. ratified it? The Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, is an internationally recognized agreement between nations, which establishes a comprehensive set of goals for individual nations to achieve on behalf of their children. Recognizing the special vulnerability of children, these goals are expressed with respect to a child's age and evolving capacities. The child's best interests are always the paramount concern. The Convention repeatedly emphasizes the primacy and importance of the role, authority, and responsibility of parents and family. It is neutral on abortion and is consistent with the principles contained in the Bill of Rights. States Party and Signatories. Currently, 196 countries are parties to the treaty, some with stated reservations or interpretations. This includes every member of the United Nations, except the United States, plus the Cook Islands, Niue, the State of Palestine, and the Holy See. The United States has not ratified it. Somalia's domestic ratification finished in January 2015, and the instrument was deposited with the United Nations in October 2015. All successor states of Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Czech Republic, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Slovenia, and Slovakia made declarations of succession to the treaty and currently apply it. If your rights or the rights of your children under this UN treaty have been violated, talk to us to enforce your children's rights and hold the perpetrators accountable. Hague Convention on the Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction. What is the Hague Convention? The Hague Convention on the Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction, or Hague Abduction Convention, is a multilateral treaty developed by the Hague Conference on Private International Law, HCCH, that provides an expeditious method to return a child internationally abducted by a parent from one member country to another. The convention was concluded on October 25, 1980, and entered into force between signatories on the 1st of December, 1983. The convention was drafted to ensure the prompt return of children who have been abducted from their country of habitual residence or wrongfully retained in a contracting state, not their country of habitual residence. The primary intention of the convention is to preserve whatever status quo child custody arrangement that existed immediately before an alleged wrongful removal or retention, thereby deterring a parent from crossing international boundaries in search of a more sympathetic court. The convention applies only to children under the age of 16. As of May 2017, 97 states are party to the convention. In 2016, Philippines and Pakistan acceded to the convention. Now that we've seen these real-life cases, where our non-stop heroes sacrifice themselves, risking even their own lives for this cause, like we stated at the beginning of this documentary, let's not let their pain, suffering, and loss be in vain. Join us in the fight against the corrupted family court system, who are making billions of dollars out of kidnapped hearts. Left behind parents. If you or your children have been mistreated by your ex-spouse and/or corrupt government officials, it's time to enforce and restore your human rights. Our tort claim remedies, combined with other legal strategies, as well as the enforcement of international treaties and conventions, are powerful legal tools and are how you and your children can fight back. We only act in your child's best interest. We always make this our highest priority. To restore the human rights of children, reunite you with your children by enforcing international laws and treaties, and to hold all bad actors accountable under international tort law. If your human rights or the rights of your children have been violated and you would like to file a tort claim for monetary damages, please talk to us to enforce your human rights and your children's human rights and hold the perpetrators accountable. The International Criminal Court against Child Kidnapping intervenes and recovers your child from any country in the world, even when nobody hears you, when nobody helps you, and when everybody lets you down. The International Criminal Court against Child Kidnapping, fighting for your family.